Amelia Carter was tired. Not the kind of tired a nap could fix. The kind that settled into your bones. The kind that showed up in silence, in sagging shoulders, in unopened bills, and in the quiet way dreams dissolved without anyone noticing. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Ridgeview Heights, the kind of place landlords forgot about until rent day. The paint was chipped, the faucet screamed when it ran, and the hallway always smelled like someone had burned something important. She didn't complain. She couldn't afford to. At 34, Amelia had learned the hard truth no one warned you about. Growing up meant shrinking yourself to make room for everyone else. And the world always expected her to shrink. She was big, bold, built like a painting the world kept trying to crop, and she had long stopped apologizing for that. Her days were a tightrope walk between taking care of her grandmother, Louise, Nana Lou, who raised her when her parents didn't, and surviving her dead-end job at Lanewood Consulting, where she was expected to be invisible unless someone needed coffee, a copy, or a crisis cleaned up. Her nights were lonelier. A flickering TV, a cold meal, a stomach that wanted more than food. She wanted love. She wanted a baby. She wanted someone to choose her without flinching. But dating at her size was an act of war. And lately, all her battles ended with her lying awake, staring at the ceiling, asking questions she didn't say out loud. Was she too late? Too different? Too much? Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, in a penthouse that cost more than her entire street block, Jacob Montgomery stood shirtless at a floor-to-ceiling window, drinking his morning espresso like it owed him something. The view was breathtaking, but Jacob wasn't looking at the skyline. He was looking at the headlines. Montgomery Heir returns. What does he want? Billionaire bad boy or power player? He closed the tab, tossed the tablet onto the couch. He didn't care what they thought. He never had. But his return wasn't about redemption. It was about control. Jacob was the reluctant heir to the Montgomery manufacturing empire, a company older than his grandfather's guilt. He didn't want the title, he didn't want the meetings, but he had unfinished business, and he always finished what he started. Tall, lean, a face carved from arrogance and ice. Jacob had a body sculpted by discipline and a heart hardened by betrayal. The last woman he loved gutted him in front of his boardroom. Now he didn't do relationships, didn't do trust, and especially didn't do second chances. To the world, he was a polished predator. But the truth, he was bored, restless, angry at how hollow winning felt. He had money, power, control, but he hadn't felt anything in a long, long time. That was about to change. Back in Ridgeview Heights, Amelia picked up a wedding invitation off the kitchen counter. Her best friend Nicole was getting married in 2 months, and the envelope still smelled like roses and privilege. Amelia loved Nicole, truly. But it was hard, watching someone else live the life you'd stopped pretending you could have. She slid the invitation into a drawer, out of sight, out of heartache. Then she opened the fridge, staring at 2 eggs, half an onion, and a yogurt that expired last Tuesday. "Gourmet," she muttered. "Michelin star, here I come." Nana Lou shuffled in behind her, wrapped in her favorite wool cardigan, the one Amelia sewed up twice already. Her steps were slow, but her eyes still sparked. "You skipping breakfast again?" Nana asked. Amelia cracked an egg into the pan, trying to beat the traffic. Lou eyed her. You know skipping meals is why you're cranky. No, I'm cranky because I work for a grown man who thinks Microsoft Word is witchcraft. She chuckled, coughed, then sighed. That cough was getting worse. You're doing too much, baby. This isn't the life you wanted. Amelia didn't answer. She just handed her the warm plate and kissed her temple. Then she walked out the door, pulled her coat tight, and disappeared into the noise of a city that never saw her. But that was okay. She had learned how to be invisible. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly predict, was that someone had already noticed her. And soon, he wouldn't be able to look away. Amelia didn't believe in fate. She believed in hard work, stress-induced acne, and discount store clearance racks. She believed in bus rides that always smelled faintly like burnt oil and old sweat, in takeout coupons that expired too soon, and in men who said, "You're not my usual type," right before ghosting her anyway. So when she found herself standing awkwardly in the gilded lobby of the Langford Grand Hotel that Friday night, wrapped in a too-tight dress borrowed from Nicole and wearing heels she couldn't afford, it wasn't because of fate. It was because her boss had volunteered her. Lanewood Consulting, where Amelia worked as a glorified errand runner, had been selected as a partner-level sponsor for the Montgomery Foundation's annual Winter Gala. Translation: a few interns and underpaid assistants got to play coat check girls while the executives drank $100 whiskey and rubbed elbows with the city's elite. Amelia didn't fit in with either group. She wasn't polished enough to belong to the rich, and not invisible enough to disappear with the help. But she had agreed to come. She needed the extra stipend. And Nana Lou needed her prescriptions refilled on Monday. So she smiled, gritted her teeth, and reminded herself to breathe. The ballroom glittered with cruelty. Soft violins playing in the background, waiters moving like ghosts, and women with surgically perfected faces laughing too loudly over nothing. Gold chandeliers reflected off champagne flutes, and everything smelled like wealth. Freshly waxed wood, peonies flown in from Ecuador, and quiet arrogance. Amelia stood near the far corner, beside a table stacked with gift bags she wasn't allowed to touch. Her job was to smile at guests as they passed by, nod politely, and occasionally point them toward the restroom. It was the kind of event she used to fantasize about attending when she was younger. Now, it just made her skin itch. "Don't slouch," came a voice behind her. "You're wearing confidence, shoulders back." Amelia turned. Nicole, radiant in navy silk, smiled like she owned the room. Her fiancé, Marcus, trailed behind, already nursing his third cocktail. "You look hot," Nicole said bluntly. "I look like Spanx is trying to kill me," Amelia replied. Nicole rolled her eyes. "Whatever, you're doing great. Come dance with us later." Amelia waved her off with a half smile. "Later," she lied. She wasn't going to dance. She wasn't going to flirt. She wasn't even going to stay the full night if she could avoid it. She just needed to keep her head down and get through it. At exactly 8:17 p.m., the room shifted. It was subtle at first, a hush in conversation, a ripple of glances, the way people began to reposition themselves slightly, like a school of fish reacting to a predator. That's when she noticed the man who had just entered. Jacob Montgomery didn't walk into rooms. He claimed them. 6'2", lean but powerful, dressed in a custom black tux that probably cost more than her monthly rent for the past year. He moved with the kind of ease that didn't come from arrogance. It came from expectation, like he had been raised to believe the world would rearrange itself around him, and often it did. His eyes were sharp, calculating, a cold steel blue that seemed to dissect the room in a glance. Amelia's breath caught. Not because he was attractive. He was, brutally so, but because she recognized him. Everyone did. Jacob Montgomery, billionaire heir, reclusive businessman, scandal survivor. The tabloids had a love-hate obsession with him, painting him as a dangerous combination of charm and chaos. Women wanted him. Men wanted to be him or destroy him. He didn't look at her. Not yet. He made his way through the room, stopping occasionally to shake a hand, nod at a familiar face, but there was a restlessness about him, like this entire event bored him, even as it orbited around him. Amelia turned away, cheeks flushed. He wasn't her world. He wasn't her story. But then, "Excuse me," came a low voice, right behind her. She stiffened. "Can I ask what you're guarding over here?" he asked. Amelia turned, slowly. Jacob Montgomery stood less than 2 feet away, hands in his pockets, one brow slightly raised. He was looking at the table stacked with glittering gift bags. She swallowed. "Just watching the goodie bags. Very dangerous. Someone might steal the scented candles." That eyebrow quirked higher. "A noble profession. I do what I can." A beat passed. His gaze lingered, not in the way other men looked, hungry or dismissive. No, this look was curious, studying, trying to figure her out like a riddle he hadn't been warned about. "I don't think we've met," he said. "We haven't. I'm Jacob." "I know." He smiled at that. "And you are?" "Amelia, just Amelia. Like Madonna. Like someone not interested in being small talk for your entertainment." Silence. Then he laughed. A real laugh, short, surprised. "You don't like me," he observed. "You don't know me. Yet." She narrowed her eyes. "Look, I know men like you. You're bored. You saw someone who doesn't belong and thought, let's have a little fun. But I'm not a side quest, Montgomery. Find another distraction." Then she walked off. Not fast, not dramatic, just done. Jacob watched her go. Something flickered in his eyes. Not rejection, not amusement. Interest. Later that night, after 2 speeches, 5 photo ops, in a painfully polite conversation with a board member trying to sell him on solar forklifts, Jacob slipped away to a private suite upstairs. He didn't expect to find anyone there. But Amelia was sitting on the floor, barefoot, heels in hand, massaging her toes and muttering curses under her breath. They stared at each other. "You lost?" she asked. "I think you're in my room." She gestured to the open door. "If I had $1 for every man who said that." He smirked, closed the door behind him. This time, she didn't walk away. The silence in that private suite wasn't awkward. It was charged. Jacob leaned against the door, one hand still on the handle, eyes locked on Amelia like she was a puzzle he suddenly felt compelled to solve. She wasn't blushing. She wasn't scrambling to impress. She was rubbing her sore feet and scowling at her left heel like it owed her money. Most women melted when he walked into a room. Amelia Carter looked like she'd rather punch him. "You really shouldn't be here," she muttered, not even looking up as she slipped her heel back on with a grimace. "If someone catches us, you'll get a scandal and I'll get fired." "I assumed you cared about either," Jacob replied, stepping farther into the room. She finally looked up. Her eyes narrowed. "Of course. Forgot who I was talking to for a second. Arrogant billionaire with no moral compass. Check. He stopped mid-step. The usual response would have been a smirk, maybe a line about his bank account. But this wasn't usual. You don't like the way I walk into rooms? You don't like the way I look at people? You sure you don't know me already? I know men like you. You're all glitter, no gravity. Jacob tilted his head. And you? I'm tired, she replied simply, of pretending I don't see what everyone sees, of being polite when people talk down to me, of being the friend, the assistant, the background character in other people's lives. She wasn't performing. That was the part that hit hardest. She wasn't trying to make a point. She was just telling the truth. Something in Jacob's expression shifted. I didn't expect you, he said honestly. Well, I didn't expect this night to end with me in a stranger's suite massaging my bunion, so I guess we're both off script. Jacob let out a breath that might have been a laugh. He moved toward the small bar tucked into the corner, pouring himself a whiskey. Drink? She shook her head. You don't trust me. Should I? Another pause. Then, no. He respected that she didn't move, that she didn't fidget or try to soften the edge between them. It was rare to meet someone who didn't flinch from power. Amelia looked it square in the eye and rolled hers. He handed her a business card, just his name. No job title, no logo. Jacob Montgomery didn't need introductions. What's this? She asked, flipping it over like there might be a joke hidden on the back. A choice? He said. I'm not sleeping with you. His eyes didn't blink. That's not what I'm asking. Amelia looked at the card again, then at him. I have to go. And this time, she did.
3 days passed. Amelia tried to forget about the gala, about Jacob Montgomery's two blue eyes and the way his presence felt like pressure in her chest. She had more important things to deal with, like how her boss had reassigned her to front desk duty without explanation, or how Nana Lou's latest prescription wasn't covered under her plan, or how she now had $212 in her checking account and rent due in 11 days. The call came at 8:12 p.m. on a Wednesday. Blocked number. She hesitated before answering. Miss Carter? Jacob's voice came through, deep and amused, like he already knew she was rolling her eyes. Did you hire someone to find my number? No, I asked your company's front desk. You really should have better gatekeeping. Amelia exhaled sharply. What do you want? A proposition. That sounds dangerously like prostitution. Not even close. A pause. Then, carefully, you said you were tired of being background. I have a temporary vacancy for someone who wants to be center stage. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a contract. She waited. I have 3 upcoming events, high profile. I'm expected to appear with a companion, someone unexpected, unconventional, someone who doesn't fawn or flatter or play games. Why me? Because you're not afraid to call me glitter with no gravity. Her heart hammered. And what do I get? He didn't hesitate. $50,000, and a bonus at the end if you complete the term without walking out. Amelia blinked. $50,000 to pretend to date you? 3 events, 2 weekends,
One exclusive arrangement. No intimacy required. Just presence, conversation, a performance of something compelling. And after, we disappear. Clean slate. She didn't respond right away. He filled the silence. Think about it. Or don't. But if you do, meet me at the Gramercy Tower Lounge tomorrow afternoon at 7 p.m. Then the line went dead.
Amelia stared at the phone for a long time. She didn't believe in easy choices, but sometimes life didn't offer you good ones. Sometimes it offered you survival with strings attached. At 6:57 p.m., she stood in front of the Gramercy Tower like a woman about to rob a bank. She had on her best dress, fitted black with long sleeves, and a pair of modest pumps. Her hair was pulled into a slick bun, her lips painted in defiance. She wasn't here for fantasy. She was here for business. Jacob was already inside, seated in a corner booth with the bourbon and a look that could turn steel soft. He stood when she approached, didn't smile, just nodded like she was exactly on time. "Sit," he said. She did. "Contract?" she asked. He slid a folder across the table. She opened it. Read, "No sex, no expectation of relationship continuation. One clause about confidentiality, one clause about exclusivity, one clause about image rights." And then her name, already typed beneath a signature line. "This is insane," she muttered. "Not if you sign it." She looked at him. "What's the real reason?" "What do you mean? Why me? Why this? Why now?" Jacob studied her, slowly. "Because, for once, I want to walk into a room and not feel like every eye is on me. I want them to look at you, to talk about you. I want a distraction, a fire." She didn't flinch. "You think I'm fire?" "I think you're not afraid to burn." She picked up the pen. "I want the money up front. Half now, half after." "Fine, but I get to walk any time if you break a single clause." Jacob nodded, and Amelia Carter signed the contract. Amelia didn't sleep that night. The contract sat on her kitchen counter like a loaded gun. Nanalu hadn't asked questions when Amelia came home looking like she'd seen a ghost, just offered a reheated bowl of soup and hummed a song from a decade that didn't belong to either of them. Amelia ate in silence, nodded through pleasantries, and then locked herself in her room, staring at her reflection like it might give her the answer she was too afraid to voice. Was she selling herself short? Or, for once, was she finally demanding to be paid what she was worth? The next morning, a Blacktown car showed up outside her apartment at 9 o'clock sharp. She didn't remember giving her address, but then again, Jacob Montgomery wasn't a man who waited for permission. He just made things happen. She stepped out in the outfit she'd laid out the night before. High-waisted navy slacks, a crisp white blouse, and a long rust-colored coat she thrifted 2 winters ago, but always loved. Her heels clicked against the sidewalk with the certainty of someone who had no time to second-guess herself. The driver opened the door. "Miss Carter." She nodded and slid in. Inside, an envelope waited on the seat. $25,000 certified transfer receipt, the first half. She stared at it for 5 long seconds, then closed her purse. She had made her choice. The first event was a benefit gala for a literacy nonprofit hosted in a converted opera house downtown. Think velvet seats, champagne towers, and enough old money to suffocate someone without a trust fund. Jacob met her at the hotel where he'd rented her a suite. No mention, no warning, just a key card slipped under her door with a note. "Wear black. Confidence optional. You won't need it." She wore red. When she stepped into the suite's lobby, he turned.
And for the first time, Jacob Montgomery forgot what he was supposed to say. Amelia's dress was fitted through the waist, with a dramatic off-shoulder neckline and a slit that flirted with scandal. Her hair was down, curling like ink on silk, and her lips were painted the color of defiance. "You said to wear black." "I did." "Well, I'm not the accessory," she added. "I'm the reason they'll stare." Jacob's mouth twitched. "Good. That's what I'm paying for."
But as he offered his arm and she took it, something sharp flickered in his expression, something that had nothing to do with contracts. The car ride was silent, not cold, calculated, like two wolves assessing each other before the first lunge. She adjusted her dress once. He looked away once. Neither mentioned it. Outside the venue, flashes exploded as cameras lit up the curb. The photographers didn't recognize her, but they recognized him, and they certainly weren't used to seeing him with someone who didn't look like a runway refugee. Jacob didn't flinch. He walked like the world owed him space. Amelia followed, chin high. Inside, the whispers started immediately. "Is that her? She's not what I expected. Montgomery's gone soft? Bold choice." Amelia heard every word. So did Jacob. He leaned close, voice low and deliberate. "You hear them?" "Of course." "Let them talk." "Who said I cared?" His smirk was sharp. "You're not playing the role I expected." "That's the idea." They made their rounds, table to table, handshakes and false smiles. Jacob introduced her with no qualifiers, no assistant, no friend, no temporary arrangement. Just, "This is Amelia." And every time he said her name like that, Amelia felt the room shift. For the first time, she wasn't background. She was the scene. But the price of attention was pressure. Near the bar, they ran into Vivian Holloway, Jacob's former flame and a socialite known for ruining reputations with a single tweet. "Well," Vivian drawled, looking Amelia up and down like she was a menu item, "this is unexpected." Jacob's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Isn't that the point?" Vivian extended a manicured hand. "Viv, I'm sure Jacob's told you all about me." "He hasn't mentioned you once," Amelia replied smoothly. Vivian's lips twitched. "How charming. And what do you do, darling?" Amelia tilted her head. "I make men uncomfortable." Jacob actually laughed. Vivian's smile cracked. She turned on her heel, heels clicking like gunfire. Once she was gone, Jacob looked at Amelia with something different. Not lust, not amusement, respect. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly. "Yes, I did." Later, as the evening waned and speeches blurred into jazz, Jacob pulled her aside into a quiet hallway away from the noise. "You handled yourself like a hurricane. I'm not here to impress your friends." "Good," he said. "I don't have any." She studied him. "You're not what I expected either." He met her gaze. "No?" "You're colder than I thought, but not as heartless." That surprised him. "You think I have a heart?" "I think you bury it in contracts." They stood in silence. The tension between them wasn't flirtation, it wasn't coy. It was heavier than that, like two people carrying invisible weights and pretending they weren't. He reached out, just briefly, and brushed the strand of hair from her cheek. His fingertips barely grazed her skin, but it set her nerves on fire. "No lines tonight?" she asked, voice quieter. "No lies either." Amelia stepped back, breaking the contact. Not because she didn't want it, but because she wanted it too much.
This is still a business deal, she reminded him. Only if you want it to be. She turned before she said something reckless, but neither of them missed the way her hand trembled slightly against her side. Over the next 2 weeks, things moved faster. Jacob introduced her to his inner circle, business partners, board members, even his sister, Charlotte, who blinked at Amelia for 5 seconds before saying, "Finally, someone who doesn't smile like a hostage." They were phonographed, followed, headlined. Montgomery's mystery woman. Who is she? Not a model, not an actress, not rich. Why her? Amelia didn't answer. She didn't need to. She knew who she was. But behind the poise, the curated outfits, and the sudden influx of attention, something unexpected was happening. Jacob stopped performing. He started showing up. He called her at night, not to flirt, but to ask how her day went. He sent Nana Lou new vitamins and a better walker without asking. He booked Amelia a private art studio downtown, left no note, just a key. She confronted him. "You're crossing lines," she said. "I don't care. This wasn't part of the deal. Maybe I'm rewriting it." And that was when Amelia realized she wasn't just playing a role anymore, and neither was he. It started with a headline. She didn't see it at first. Nicole texted her the link at 6:03 a.m., followed by a single message. "You need to see this before everyone else does." Amelia blinked awake, still tangled in her sheets, the soft hum of the space heater buzzing near her feet. She had just come back from a whirlwind weekend with Jacob, black tie event in D.C., board luncheon in Tribeca, and a stolen kiss in an elevator that neither of them mentioned afterward. Everything had been moving fast, but not recklessly. It had felt real. Until now. She clicked the link. Jacob Montgomery's fake love affair. Sources say it's all for PR. Beneath it, grainy photos of her with him, laughing, standing too close, the exact moments she had started to believe in. The article was brutal. Citing anonymous insiders, it claimed Jacob's relationship with her was staged to rehabilitate his image and distract the media from a pending investigation into one of the Montgomery subsidiaries. It quoted sources calling her a hired decoy, a calculated risk, a disposable move. Her stomach dropped. And then, the final line, "The woman, Amelia Carter, was selected precisely because she defied expectations, curvy, unknown, and unlikely. She'd make headlines without outshining the man holding the leash." Amelia sat up slowly, every cell in her body going cold. Her phone rang, Jacob's name. She stared at it, let it ring, watched it stop. Then it lit up again. She answered. "You've seen it," he said. No question in his voice, just certainty. "I have." Silence stretched between them. "You didn't tell me there was an investigation," she said flatly. "There wasn't, not really. It's internal politics, an ex-board member looking for leverage. But you used me." "No, I protected you." She laughed, short, bitter. "You can't even say the words. Just once, Jacob, be honest. Was I picked because I was convenient? Because I was different enough to get attention, but not important enough to make waves?" His voice was low, controlled, but there was a crack forming. "I picked you because you didn't need me." That's not an answer. "I didn't plan this." "But you did. You needed a story. I became the headline." She stood, pacing her room. "You bought me off with cash and compliments and called it a contract. You said no lies, remember? That night in the hallway?" "I didn't lie," he said sharply. "I just didn't tell you everything." "That's still a lie, Jacob, just with better lighting." There was a long silence. Then he said quietly, "I didn't expect to care." And that made it worse. Because somewhere between gala smiles and late-night phone calls, she had started to believe in him. She hadn't expected love, but she hadn't expected betrayal either. "I can't do this anymore," she said. He didn't argue. That hurt more than if he had. When she ended the call, she felt something inside her snap. Not loudly, not violently. Just a soft click, like a door closing behind her. She packed her things, left the hotel suite, deleted the contact, burned the contract, refused every call that followed. And for the first time in weeks, Amelia Carter was alone again. But this time, it was by choice. The next week passed like molasses. Nanalu noticed instantly. "You've gone quiet," she said, sipping tea with trembling fingers. "I'm tired." "You've been tired for 10 years. This is something else." Amelia didn't respond. She returned to her old job, though the office was colder now. People looked at her like she was a story. Like they were waiting for her to say yes, it was all fake, or no, we were in love. And every option felt like a trap. She ignored them, sat at her desk, did the work, came home, watched the light fade. Her art studio key sat untouched in her purse. She hadn't known back. Because painting now would feel like giving shape to grief. And she wasn't ready to admit how much she had lost. Until Nanalu coughed so hard one night she couldn't catch her breath. They rushed to the ER, waited under flickering fluorescent lights. Doctors came and went. The machine beeped slow and steady. Amelia held her grandmother's hand and smiled like she wasn't falling apart. But they both knew better. That night, when the nurse offered her a blanket and a chair, Amelia stepped into the hallway and sobbed. Not because of the hospital, because everything was breaking, and she was tired of pretending she could carry it all. The next morning, when she returned to the room, there was a painting propped against the wall. Her painting. The first one she'd started before the arrangement. The one Jacob had seen her sketch once. The one she never showed him finished. It had been framed, professionally, behind museum-grade glass. And there was a note attached. "For the fire you keep trying to smother, let it burn. J." She stared at it, fingers trembling. And for the first time since the article, she cried with outrage. Because no one had ever honored her like that before. Not just her body, not just her presence, her art. The next day, her rent was paid. Her grandmother's medication was delivered early. A donor, anonymous, covered her insurance copay. She knew it was him. But he didn't call, didn't show up, didn't ask for thanks. That was when she realized something had changed. Jacob wasn't trying to fix it. He was trying to earn it. 2 weeks later, Amelia walked into the gallery without warning. It was a small space, tucked into the Lower East Side, still smelling of fresh paint and sawdust. The curator looked up and smiled like he had been expecting her. "We just hung the last piece," he said. She blinked. "Last piece?" He gestured around. 6 paintings, all hers, all framed, all lit like they mattered. "The show opens next week," he added. "A private investor sponsored the entire thing, told us not to tell you until it was ready." Amelia didn't speak, just stood there, surrounded by pieces of herself, she had buried long ago. Jacob didn't buy her. He believed in her. That was worse, because it meant she had to decide what she believed in now. He was waiting outside when she left, leaning against the hood of his black car, suit jacket slung over one shoulder, no tie, no mask, no press. Just Jacob, not the billionaire, just the man. "I figured you'd come," he said. Confident, hopeful. She crossed her arms. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" "Because I was afraid you'd walk away." "I did. And I let you? Because you deserved to."
She stepped closer, slowly. "You didn't chase me. I didn't want to take what you weren't ready to give." That's silence again. This time, it wasn't tense. It was waiting. She looked up at him. "What is this now?" "No contracts," he said. "No terms, no games. Just us, if you'll have me." Her throat tightened, but her voice was clear. "Then let's see who we are without pretending." He smiled. And this time it reached his eyes. They didn't fall into each other's arms. There were no dramatic kisses under rainstorms, no swelling music, no declarations screamed across busy streets. Instead, Amelia and Jacob started over the way most real things do, awkwardly, cautiously, and with 1,000 unsaid things sitting between them. He didn't rush her. She didn't test him. They just showed up, one day at a time. Jacob visited Nana Lou weekly now, often pretending he was there for the tea. She called him Monty and teased him mercilessly about his tight pants and tight jaw. Amelia watched him soften in ways she never thought possible. He listened. He helped. Her studio,
He stayed.
this time not as a place to hide, but a space to rebuild. Her hands moved with confidence now, strokes bolder, color richer. She painted pain, yes, but she also painted healing, wholeness, becoming. And Jacob, he stood at the edges of those moments, never demanding entry, only ever asking one quiet question. "Are you okay today?" Most days she said yes. Some days she didn't. But he never left. They never talked about labels. Not yet. It wasn't necessary. What they were wasn't about definitions anymore. It was about choice. They chose to be in the same room. They chose to share silence without filling it with apology. They chose each other, even if they still didn't know what came next. And in a world where everything was always rushing, screaming, demanding, that quiet choice was louder than love songs. It was Amelia's idea to go back to the gala. Same venue, same people, 1 year later. She wore the same red dress. Jacob wore the same watch. But this time, no one whispered. No one questioned. Because now they walked in as equals. Not as performance, not as transaction, not as distraction, but as two people who had learned how to bleed and still wanted to stand together anyway. Vivian passed by again, lips pursed, voice clipped. "Well, I see the PR campaign worked." Amelia smiled. "You're still watching it, though." Jacob didn't even blink. Later that night, as the crowd dispersed and the chandeliers dimmed, they stepped out into the cool night air. Jacob looked down at her, hands tucked in his coat pocket. "I don't know how to be perfect," he said. "I'm not asking you to be. I'll mess up, probably often. I will too. But I won't walk away," he said quietly. "Then we'll figure it out," she whispered. She slipped her fingers into his, and this time he let her lead.
Not because he was weak, but because he finally understood. Strength wasn't about control. It was about trust. In the end, there was no fairy tale. There was no perfect bow, no Hollywood fade to black. Just a woman who learned her voice didn't need to be soft to be heard. Just a man who realized love wasn't something to conquer, it was something to earn. And just enough space between them for something real to grow. Because sometimes the most powerful love story is the one where you stop pretending and finally let yourself be seen. If this story hit a nerve, if you've ever been told you were too different, too late, or not enough, let this be your reminder. You don't need permission to want more, and you never, ever have to shrink to be loved. Hit that subscribe button for more raw, real stories that cut deeper than the cliches. This is just the beginning.